There we go.
You can tell we're live, right? Finally, we got the announcement. Software that's not buggy is not worth using, right?
That's right.
Cameron Belt, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks. The pleasure's all mine.
Let me just say, first of all, that I appreciate all the work you've done for Liberty.me. It's been amazing. You ran last night before our classroom on Frank Tradoff's Rise and Fall of Society. You published your complete summary of the book.
I did, yeah. I threw that up there because I thought it would be a nice little helpful thing to see and see how the community likes it and if they want some more of that kind of content.
Oh, absolutely. It was amazing for me. I mean, as the instructor who's read the book, 20 times, it was still very useful to be able to go through your summary and be reminded of all the core points, which you articulated very, very well and fairly and with a great deal of balance and sobriety. So I appreciated it.
Thanks. It was a lot of fun to go through there, and it was a challenge, but I like that challenge.
You like the book, right?
I love it. Along with you, it's my favorite book that I've read, I think, so far.
This is the one you would recommend to everybody?
I would, that one I would recommend to everybody. It honestly comes through, and it constantly made me want to smack my head every single page, thinking, like, why didn't I think of it that way? Right. It's very pragmatic in the way that it looks at everything, and it leaves almost no answers, or questions unanswered, I should say. Well,
it was the fulfillment of a lifetime of work. I mean, right. Did you attend class last night and saw my lecture about it?
I did, yeah.
Did you learn anything, or was it all stuff you knew?
No, it was good to see your perspective on, like, the bureaucracy part of it all, because that's where I took a lot of pleasure in reading that part of the book, because it made me really see the government the state for what it truly is.
Right.
And that's something that when you tell people about, it's not politicians, we can have some control. It's the people that we don't have any control about.
Right.
It's the people that they appoint and then the people that they hire underneath them that are really messing with our lives the most.
Yeah, and Chodorov had spent a lifetime sort of studying this, and he kind of revealed it in this book.
Yeah, and that's kind of, in a certain sense, what my guide kind of looks at, too.
So tell me about your guide. It's called Doing Business Under Bureaucracy?
Doing Business Under Leviathan.
Yeah.
Starting a business under Leviathan, I believe is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about the regulatory loopholes you have to jump through to start a business.
Mm.
It's very pragmatic in that sense. There's always talks about whether or not the regulations should or shouldn't exist and everything along those lines. But
right.
For those of us who want to actually go and better the world,
right.
It's good for us to know what we're up against when we want to go out and start business. And that was the motivation behind writing this guide. We can talk all day long about whether or not these should exist or if they're bad or good. But at the end of the day, if you really want to start adding value to your local community, your state, your city, whatever it is, you have to get through them, unfortunately.
Right. It's a different perspective in a way. It's not just about the world we wish that could come about and should, but the world we're dealing with right now in our towns and in the federal level, at the state level, at the local level.
Right. It's that medium right in between where we want to be, I think, because the stance that I take throughout the guide is entrepreneurs are going to be the death of Leviathan. That's the way that it's going to perish.
Right.
They protect the status quo. They maintain that. They're backwards thinking, while entrepreneurs are those ones who are forward thinking and disrupt everything. And it's only by being able to start disrupting, which we can sometimes only do by jumping through the bureaucratic hoops, that eventually the state's going to perish.
So how do you go about this from a practical point of view while maintaining your ideological convictions? Is that a problem? I mean, we've seen this again and again for the last 100 years. The business that manages to get through the costs of Leviathan suddenly have an investment in that structure.
Yeah, it's true. That is really what ends up happening, because after a certain point, favors getting dole out. People start getting cozy with one another, so that way business is a little bit easier to be done. I guess, it's got to be in the values of the people who are starting the business and who are running the business, and to understand really what is getting in the way of them adding value to other people's lives. So it's in a certain sense, this guide is designed to get more people out there, at least within Nevada, who are of a mindset of freedom loving and liberty people, to actually get out and start making changes in the world and disrupting the status quo.
Who are the you've thought about the subject a lot. Who are the names that come to mind, to your mind, who embody that sort of ideal, working within the system but trying to destroy it too?
As of right now, I think it's all the Bitcoin entrepreneurs, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
People who are starting up the Bitcoin businesses and things along those lines, because the state has no idea on how to regulate them yet. I mean, we see that FinCEN comes out and says, "Oh, you need money transmitter licenses," and then the IRS says, "It's not money, it's property." I mean, what is it exactly? If I need a money transmitter license, but to deal in property, how does that reconcile itself? So in reality, there's a lot of these Bitcoin entrepreneurs. I think it was the one in charge of Bitstamp who got didn't end up getting arrested or detained or got in trouble a little bit, and he's one of the guys that was so much a part of just at least getting through and dealing with the regulations and saying, okay, let's at least get through this so we can actually get what we see is going to benefit the rest of the world out there. Eventually,
you're speaking about my friend Charlie Shrim, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
But he's in jail. I mean, he's got an ankle bracelet. He can't leave his apartment, without the government knowing about it.
Right.
So, is this what happens to innovators in our world?
It can happen. I mean, it just did. I like to think that there's a way around that, though. I mean, I don't really know what that delicate balance is. Treading that line is sometimes the only way for society to really progress. I mean, what he's done is a lot of really good things, and he's set up a foundation for a lot more entrepreneurs to come through. And there's also a lot more press about it. Then a lot more people understand that this is what's happening, this is what's going on. He hasn't done anything wrong, and yet he's getting punished for it. Right. And that's a conversation that's now happening. Unfortunately, sometimes things have to happen like that in order to get word out there and to get more people to support it. But
so what are your top recommendations for people who are confronting this? Obviously, every entrepreneur is a kind of a revolutionary,
right.
Going beyond what exists, going outside the law to some extent, because the bureaucracy codifies the status quo. The great entrepreneur, destroys the status quo. So he's always going to be a little bit of an edgy figure. Right. What are your top recommendations for entrepreneurship, for the entrepreneurs who want to build great things despite Leviathan?
I always like to look at the world as don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness. But when it comes to the state, that one can kind of shoot yourself in the foot, you know what I mean? Because they're the ones who have the ultimate authority on things, and they can end up throwing you in with an ankle bracelet in your apartment or house or anything along those lines. So I'd say tread carefully when you're starting up at first, to be honest with you. Get through it so that way you can actually start getting out there, and then once you gain that approval to add value to people's lives, do as much as you possibly can to show how insignificant the state really is.
It's quite an undertaking in a way. I mean, I look at the Bitcoin entrepreneurs, and it frustrates me how many resources are going towards serving the regulatory agencies as versus making better interfaces for consumers. It's a massive squandering of resources.
One of my really good friends is the chief technology officer and founder of RoboCoin, one of the bi-directional ATMs for Bitcoins that are out there. And we talk all the time about the regulatory hoops that he's jumping through to get these machines out there in the world. And he tells me the costs of going and having tests done on the machines. I think there was one test in order for him to actually ship it internationally. They had to take the machine and put it inside of a vacuum-sealed area to see what kinds of emissions it created. And that cost him over $70,000, I think, to do that one test. And it's astounding to see that, and that's $70,000 that goes away from hiring another programmer to be able to, take care of the customers that they're trying to get through and getting more machines out there. Ludicrous, to be honest.
In fact, I'm getting to the point now because cryptocurrency has been around 5 years. It's so obviously superior to national currency. And I look at our interfaces and I look at the tools we have, and I see that they're not quite like where they should be, given the technology.
Right.
And I wonder to what extent we can actually blame the state for this, for diverting resources. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's both diverting resources, and it's also just erecting barriers for people to want to make that jump. There's a lot of financiers and things along those lines who are out there who want to get into new technologies and new ways to add value to the world, but a lot of them are very hesitant to do so as of right now. There's a lot of big-name firms and big-name VC companies out there who would love to get into the game, but they don't. There's so much regime uncertainty in this sense that they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So they end up.
You can look back at history and see that it's always been this way. I mean, the steam engine, was the same situation. Patent granted to, I forget his name, whatever. Technology frozen in place for 10 years when everybody else wanted to innovate and get better. Right. It was this way with flight, with the Wright brothers, with their stupid little patent they got for their dumb little airplane. Right. And so, this is always the way it's been. When governments intervene, try to stop the progress of technology.
And the worst part about it is, for those bigger companies, those people that have financiers behind them, they can push through a lot easier. They've got the money for lawyers and things along those lines, people to get through the muck. But if you're just starting up a dry cleaning business, and because you just want to make your life better, you want to stop working for somebody else and want to start working for yourself, you don't have that much capital. And at the same time, if you know how to clean clothes and things like that, you might not have the necessary skills to drudge through thousands of pages of zoning codes and other sorts of bureaucratic mess you have to deal with in order to get out there and live for yourself and work for yourself, I should say. Right. And that's sort of what I want my guide to do is those big businesses and those big financiers and everything along those lines, guys have capital, they can get through things. They can hire people. There's usually a market for those people to help them out.
My whole experience in this area is that an entrepreneur is typically a dreamer. They assume a kind of anarchist template. They see the world as operating a certain way, and they see a way it can be better. Right. But as part of that vision and that dream, they don't kind of often take into account the existence of the state. That they can't believe in the barriers, otherwise they wouldn't be entrepreneurs. And then they get slammed with the reality of the world.
Right. It's daunting task, really, and that's what I wanted to make it less daunting. And I was hoping that it might be a little bit of a step. There's tons of government regulatory agencies throughout the state who've published their own little guides here or there about how to get through the hoops and things like that, and they're useful, but none of them were complete at any point in time were they even close, and none of them had best practices either. Like, for instance, I think the biggest hurdle to starting a local business, one that actually has a storefront and things like that, is zoning. You might think that this is a great location, but there might be some land use restriction that your business can't go there. If you don't check with zoning first and you just start going along, raising the capital, getting ready to go, sign a lease, and then all of a sudden, oh shoot, you're just three steps down the list and zoning's not good, well then you're SOL. So that's why I made it my first step into starting a business is checking with zoning first, because that's the one that really could be the biggest hurdle.
So the idea is that you get over the biggest hurdles, the most obvious ones first, and then maybe you have to crash through a few other barriers down the line. This seems what Uber taxi did, right? I mean, it saw a kind of a loophole in the law, right? Right. And it just drove right through it and dared local governments to shut them down.
Right. Yeah, definitely. What's crazy in Nevada is the people like Uber and Lyft, they don't exist here. They're not going to either because of the state regulations there are for motor carrier businesses. Uber actually tried to break into Las Vegas because, I mean, there's a lot of traffic down there for tourists, right? And a lot of people going from the airport. You've been there before. You've seen how it all works, and it's a crazy mess. But there's actually a state regulatory agency that grants licenses for all motor carrier businesses, whether you're a taxi driver, a limo driver, a tow company, any one of those things. But if you want to start your business, you actually have to get the acceptance of all your competitors, because they can sit on the board if they're vested interest parties, and they can see your pro forma, your yearly statements, everything, your plan, where you're you're going to do business, how you're going to do business, what rates you're going to charge.
Right.
And they can sit back and go, no, we don't want them here. It's explicitly in the state laws. It says that that board, the Nevada Transportation Authority, exists to restrict competition.
Right.
And that's something that many people don't really know. And a great service like Uber or Lyft isn't allowed here. There's actually active stings that the NTA does throughout the state. If me and some of my college buddies had a big truck and we wanted to start moving people around, we have an actual threat of getting criminal time in one of the jails up here, because there'd be a sting out there that says, nope, you guys aren't allowed to do this. You're not allowed to help your neighbor and take money for it.
How does this meet with public opinion? I've always been curious about this. In Los Angeles, Uber went to work, and the public rose up against the politicians who tried to shut them down. Why isn't that happening in Las Vegas? Is it because the population is too transitory, and the entrenched people don't care, or what's going on there politically?
I don't think that it's the entrenched people don't care so much. It could be that the transitory people, the more recent move-ins to Las Vegas, don't really care as much. But at the same time, it's been around for forever. And the taxi unions, taxi lobbies throughout the state are extraordinarily powerful.
Right.
To be completely honest. And it started up as a way to, it was under the guise of consumer protection. It was, we want to make sure that there's no gypsy taxis. People are actually getting the right rides and things like that. But that's a way of the past. We have Yelp now. I could sit there on my phone and decide this company is the best because it has this many ratings. I mean, the market's already fixed that. So why are we still in this anachronistic mindset of making sure that we have this regulatory board?
It's crazy. And the same thing is true with even prostitution. Right? I mean, it's not even allowed in Vegas, even though it's one of the biggest industries. Right.
It's allowed through the state so long as the county has less than X amount of residents. I think it's like 500,000 or somewhere around there. But yeah, so as of right now, I'm in Reno going to school. I could literally just jump on the freeway and drive 15 minutes, and I'm right there at a world famous brothel. But there couldn't be one across my street apparently.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the takeaway is from your guide for people? What do you think people would benefit from reading it?
I wanted to get people in the mindset of a call to action. We need to get out there and start adding value and not allowing this to stop ourselves. Ludwig von Mises has a quote where he says most entrepreneurs are just regular Joe Schmoes. He says every ingenious man is free to start a new business projects. He may be poor, his funds may be modest, and most of them may be borrowed. But if he fills the wants of consumers in the best and cheapest way, he'll succeed. And entrepreneurs can't do that until they get through the state. Let's get through it, and then let's kill it afterwards. That's kind of what I want to do. And I want to see this happen for this kind of a guide be created for the other states throughout the U.S. Let's make actionable liberty possible. That's what Liberty.me is all about. Let's get out there and let's start making our world better.
Right. Stop just thinking about liberty and start doing it, right? And so I very much appreciate your perspective. I mean, it's grappling with the real world in a radical way. These have, in the past, I think, been seen as contradictory, like you can either be radical or you can deal with the real world. But that's not really true. You can do both, don't you think?
I think so. And I see people all the time doing it, and it makes me happy to see that.
Right. Well, Cameron, I very much appreciate your work for Liberty.me. You've done so much work. Your guide is easily downloadable right now, but then also you're writing other book summaries and you're doing all kinds of other work. So I very much appreciate all the work you've done for the company, which we're fledgling, but pretty wonderful, don't you think?
Oh, I think it's the best project that I could be a part of as of right now. I've never been happier, I'll say that much, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
That's great. Well, it's wonderful to see you and have you on here. I enjoyed meeting you in Auburn a couple of months ago. Yeah. And I look forward to seeing you at Freedom Fest soon, right?
It'll be awesome. We'll be there. We'll be tabling and having fun there and showing everybody what Liberty.me is all about.
It'll be amazing, Cameron. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.